You served your country honorably. Now follow hundreds of other veteran entrepreneurs to start your own mission as a business owner. The Veterans Business Community has all the resources you will need to be successful as a small business owner. Join today.
All right, gentlemen, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Veteran Business Community. We call it Masterclass Mondays, where we interview a fellow military veteran entrepreneur on their journey and what they've done since leaving the military and the type of business that they've built. And then we'll take some lesson learned, some Q&As and everything else. And we're really excited to have Mr. Rick Howard on. And before we pop him on here, I'm going to let Mr. David Jones introduce himself and welcome everybody to the call.
Yeah, good to see everybody here. If you're coming from our school community, welcome. If you're coming from one of our LinkedIn groups or from, one of Rick's background, good to meet you here. Yeah, I'm going to be kind of a fly on the wall for this until the end, and then I'll walk everybody through kind of our community and what we have going on. But real excited to have Rick here. He has built what I would probably consider, and this is just me personally, one of the best government contract training programs out there that really I've ever worked with. And I've worked with a lot of them. So really excited to have you here, Rick. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks, David. I'll pop you out here for a moment if you want to stay on with us, and then we'll pepper Rick here with a bunch of questions. Get all the secrets out of him.
All the secrets.
All right. Cool. David, thanks for that kind of introduction of Rick, and just so everybody knows here, I know Rick on a very personal level. We work together within his GovClose system now for about two and a half years, somewhere's in there. So yeah. I've seen Rick build this company from scratch. But before that, he built his consulting business and now helps other people build consulting businesses. And his specialty is in government contracting, which I'm not going to steal his thunder and let him kind of explain his journey and kind of how he landed on that. So with that, Rick, welcome. Thanks for taking the time, and we'd love to kind of learn about your story, kind of what you did in the military, and then how that transition was, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah. No, happy to talk about it. So my name's Rick, and as you said, and I spent 20 years in the Air Force. I was a officer and started off flying. So first half of my career or so was as a navigator, flying intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance aircraft and all the deployments and all that stuff. Then about halfway through, I transitioned into acquisitions, and acquisitions is the profession of putting companies on contract for the government. There's some reasons why I transitioned. We can or we don't have to get into that if you don't want to. But yeah, definitely a big career shift for me. And it was a vast learning curve on how we actually put companies on contract for the military and other federal agencies, the federal acquisitions regulations, the laws and policies involved. But I found it very rewarding. I also saw how small businesses struggled in that environment. And I was mainly working in the technology areas, right, to solve classified and unclassified problem sets. I did some foreign military sales work in Saudi Arabia. And then when I retired, it was an easy transition for me to go from working in government acquisitions. I say easy. We can go into what that transition actually looked like. But eventually I landed on consulting, owning my own business, which is what I wanted to do. We have an entrepreneurial family. So starting that business, bringing on clients, and then scaling my consulting business, which, as you kind of alluded to, was also part training. I was training companies the whole way. So I had a few different training programs that I worked on over the years before we got together. And then we can talk about how social media impacted things, and a lot of leads started coming in that were, you'd call them warm leads, right? So we had a lot of inbound traffic, which is about the time I reached out to you because I needed help. So once you get to a certain point, you got to start hiring people that have different skill sets, and then we scaled GovClose as we know it today. to where it is. So yeah, happy to be here, and happy to answer any questions that you or anybody else has about what that looks like. And
Yeah.
I'm here to be honest and hopefully help some vets and other people with their careers and maybe their entrepreneurial endeavors.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rick, thanks for sharing that with us. It's
Yeah.
quite the background, and kind of what I want to dig in to is, when you were in the military and then you were working with companies that were trying to sell to you, aka sell to the government. Had you ever thought that this would be potentially like an avenue for you when you got out of the military? Were you already kind of thinking that, and when did that kind of idea hit you?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs kind of come from the same makeup where when you're a kid you always hear the stories, your kids selling stuff door to door or shoveling driveways and stuff like that. I feel like I'm always thinking about how I can turn something into a business. I remember sitting in before a couple years before I retired in Saudi Arabia, coming up with different names for consulting businesses with a couple of the guys I worked with, which by the way I ended up hiring to work for my consulting business after after retiring. So yeah, I was definitely thinking about it. It was certainly in the in the background there, just thinking about what I want to do.
Gotcha. So how far in that was to when you were transition? Were you close to transition? Were you close to getting in the military? Was it 2-3 years? Like, walk us through kind of like what that timeline was.
As far as planning out what I
Yeah.
wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had an LLC. I screwed around with a couple different ideas while I was still in the military. By the time I retired, I had done a bunch of business plans on different, like for instance, my dad owned a painting company, and I was looking at some other business options. It was pretty clear to me that consulting and working in this space was going to have the highest profit margins. Also, the need and the amount of funding out there that the really could, what I if I was going to give you my sales pitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
U.S. government's the biggest purchaser of goods and services in the world. They're required to buy from small businesses. About 23% of spending goes to small businesses, but 0.14%, last time I did the math, of the 36 million small businesses in the United States actually have government contracts, right? And that number is going down every year.
Right.
From the inside, I knew how they struggled to get onto contracts, right? How to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially what's happening now is that the number of small businesses selling to the government is going down, but the amount of money going to small businesses is going up.
Mm-hmm.
I knew there was a need. But yeah, I mean, I didn't land right on it, right? I helped my wife with real estate for about 6 months, and I really didn't like that. I knew I didn't want to work for a company, like as a W-2 employee, at least at the time, right? That was my thought process. And I was in a nice position where I had some job offers come in, which I turned down, because I was working with my wife. But then they turned into like, well, Rick, kind of condescending, right? I remember like, hey, Rick, I got it. You don't want to, work for a defense contractor right now. How about as a consultant? And I was like, oh, I remember thinking about that, right? And what dawned on me, if anyone has been involved with something like real estate, where you're working really hard for all your leads and your clients, for government contracting, all of a sudden I just had having opportunities come to me because of my background, right? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
if these offers are just coming to me, right, versus this highly competitive area, and I can make more, I should be focused on this.
Yeah.
So it took me about 6 months to get through it. And then, of course, I started my consulting business right as COVID locked everything down.
Mm. Got you. So, how did they find you though? So, were you out on social media, LinkedIn? Were you applying, for jobs on the internet? Were you networking,
Yeah.
within your military affiliations? And
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I was a known commodity to a certain extent as I retired, just because of what I was doing, right, with the company. So I had some tentative job offers based on that, and some of those turned into consulting offers. But in actuality, that's not how I got my first consulting clients. I was doing outreach. I was doing, a combination of things, email marketing, right? I'd reach out to specific companies that I thought I could help. I did some work through some of the paid consulting websites, right? So there's some kind of high-end ones like GLG and Catalent. And then there's some like ones that you don't really think of, like Upwork, for instance, right? And I did, I don't know, 40, 50 grand of consulting work through Upwork that first year or so. So kind of a combination of things before I landed. I really like, and everyone has to go through their own journey of client acquisition and consulting at least. But yeah, it took me about a year to really solidify my process for bringing clients on. So I always had a full workload.
Yeah, quite a bit to unpack, right? Because I think that's where most folks coming out of the military struggle. Maybe they have a skill set, they have a certain set of military experience and expertise, and they want to be able to leverage that in consulting business. There's a lot of military folks that move in the consulting and way, right? And they'll do it through like leadership, operations, logistics, things like that. But they have no idea how to identify, find their ideal client, and then reach out to them. So how did you figure that out?
As far as finding my ideal clients and
Yep.
doing that type of thing, honestly, as a veteran, right, we are used to doing a lot of training. I was certainly used to doing a lot of training, whether it was through my flying days or acquisitions, right? So, for me, going and paying people that have actually done this before to help train me it was a natural thing to do, right?
Right.
So I took multiple consulting programs, like how to run a consulting business. I did trainings. I did some of the free mentorship training. I reached out to people a lot. I reached out to a lot of businesses, that were kind of in this space and around it. And some of it was just, dumb luck and stumbling around. Like I started a podcast at the right time, right?
Mhm.
And a YouTube channel. And I had an assistant that started posting our podcast stuff on YouTube. We can get into that later, right? And that kind
Mhm.
of took off. Um, Email marketing was something that was new to me, but I kind of was obsessed with it, right? So if that was a part of the business, the marketing piece and the client acquisitions piece, that's what I ended up really building my business off of, which was email. And I realized pretty quickly how important that was. A lot of that was the training that I had received going into it. And some of it was too, just like, growing up with my dad's business, I had kind of understood how effective niching down and being very specific with what you offer and making your offer high end, and targeting the right folks, companies that have money that can actually hire you, not wasting your time with, so look, there's a lot that goes into that, but hopefully I answered your question. They probably combination of training, dumb luck, and like an obsession with email.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's where most people that start consulting businesses uh, aren't thinking about.
Mhm.
How am I going to find my ideal client, and where am I going to find them, and how am I going to do outreach and that sort of thing? Or if they do, they're just depending upon their network, right? And they're just
Right.
calling on their network. So let's dig in a little bit of that. Like was like LinkedIn, obviously the platform that we're on now, and I know you do some lives on LinkedIn. Was that kind of where initially that you started to kind of build a public, if we will, profile?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn, I started my LinkedIn profile. God, I don't know if I started it, but I certainly like started paying attention to it during the transition assistance program as I was
Mhm.
leaving the military. We kind of made a game of it, I remember, in that program to see how many connections we could get before like whatever it was, like 3 days or a week long class was over. Um, then working with my wife in real estate, I really exploited LinkedIn for leads. And I think, I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I think I was pretty good at it. And I kind of learned what works, what doesn't work. I made like all the mistakes, right? But using that, as soon as I made the transition over into what I'm doing now, that it worked even better. So, LinkedIn was always part of it. It wasn't the primary source of a lead gen, but I certainly I've done plenty of work through people that I've met on LinkedIn and companies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I myself, I'm obviously a big proponent of LinkedIn. Doing the LinkedIn Live here.
Yeah.
I've seen it grown for quite some time now, and that's always been a strategy of mine. Is just reaching out to other military folks, and I
Hmm.
think that like anybody that's here listening to that, like that's a key. Is just building a network of veterans. out there and their connections and who they're connected with, or they're working at a company that, you see where you want to work at, or are your actual ICP, right? So, there's a lot of the advanced search with the LinkedIn Premium that you can do to really identify those, people that worked at, the past company would be some branch of service. And then you can search by, title, you can search by location and other key factors, and then be connecting with those. Because what I've realized is that military folks will just connect with other military folks, right?
Yeah.
And having that stuff on your profile and being able to build your profile where, you do have, your military information on there. Like myself, I've got USAF, vet. And Rick, I know you and I've talked about this before. You've always had a little bit of an issue, right, with the, your rank, retired type thing. But like, it's important, right? Because people will immediately identify with that.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think that one thing, like just bringing it back to, I think veterans are your core audience here, right? I mean, the military does not do a good job they do a good job at a lot of things, right? But they don't do a good job of preparing you, I think, still for what comes after, and how important, if anything, you get the warnings about what not to post on social media, right? When you're in the military. But LinkedIn in particular is very important, not just for starting a business or for lead generation, but it's kind of it's where companies go to see if you're a real person. Hey, can I trust you? Like, how real are you? So if you go to a profile, I mean, just like a couple, even if you're just like, if you're looking for a job, or because you don't know what's going to happen, right? A couple of years from now, you want that LinkedIn profile to be solid, right? So you want to have your work history there. You want to have, a good picture that's professional and your banners and everything, but also your connections, kind of like what you're talking about, right? Like kind of 500 is kind of the benchmark, right? Because it just says 500 plus. But so when you're looking at people, and I do this too, like if someone's trying to connect with me, I'm like, okay, who is this person, right? Do they, if you see a LinkedIn account and it's got 20 connections on there, you're like, okay, someone just started this. Are they even real? Versus, oh, here's someone on here. They have 1 or 2,000 connections. I have a lot of similar connections as them. I can see their education. I can see their work history. I can see if they've been in the military, and I can see like right under their name, this is what they're saying that they do. Even if that's not what necessarily lands a client or the job, it's still often where a company's going to go or a person's going to go just to see that you're real. It might be the first step before they go to your website.
Yeah, as well as the recommendations and the
Oh,
endorsement.
yeah.
And I know you do a great job of that for, for your students that work with you in GovClose when they graduate the certification program. Like you're always, doing a post about them and writing them a letter of recommendation or endorsement.
Yeah, I mean, and so the GovClose, haven't got into that, and we don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. But of the 323 people or whatever it is right now that are in GovClose, that are in our community, a strong majority of them have consulting businesses, and LinkedIn works great for them right now for getting leads and for bringing on companies that they're helping with specific areas of government contracting. So LinkedIn is, if anything, it's becoming more and more relevant.
Yeah. And I think it's a major way to build yourself as as a public, profile and persona, right? And obviously putting content out there and things about what you're doing or what you're working on or thoughts or things. I see so many people that join LinkedIn and never post anything. Matter of fact, there is a search algorithm that you can use in the premium that if they've never posted on LinkedIn, then you can sort those out. And I do that actually.
Yeah.
So when I connect with people now, if you haven't posted something on LinkedIn, chances are I'm not sending you a connection request because you're just not really utilizing the platform, social media, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, why would you? I mean, if you could see people that have been active on LinkedIn the past 3 months, if people aren't even going to it or posting anything, why would you interact with them?
Yeah, exactly. So that's great. And then, so you also mentioned, from LinkedIn, you started a podcast early on. Tell us a little bit about that process and how that came about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, everyone's got a podcast these days. I just loved podcasts at the time. There was only one other government contracting podcast that I knew of, maybe two at the time, or at least that I would listen to. I thought it was a great way to, I just wanted to get into it because I was intrigued by the format. And it also allowed me to, just aside from marketing, like, hey, I can help you do X. Now I could reach out to companies and just interview them, right, for the
Yeah.
podcast. And so that was actually extremely valuable for me for everything, right? For one, is it brought these people into kind of my ecosystem. I was able to put them in front of both government and other people that may be interested in working with a company. I got to learn from them, right, without any like sales like overhang. But it also did turn into clients, right? Like after the interviews, they'd find out something about me and be like, oh, maybe you can help me with X.
Mhm.
And the podcast, it's funny because it just goes to show like you don't have to have that many people following you. Like the whole, we could talk about social media for the next 3 hours, right? But now they were talking about micro influencers before. Now they're talking about nano influencers, which is, I think I had 100 people that would listen to that podcast, and I got clients out of that 100 people. This is like first year or so. Like I had clients out of that 100 people that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars within our consulting business. And that's when it was small, right? Now, what ended up happening is my assistant started posting the audio only. Okay, so think about how nuts this is.
Mhm.
The audio only recordings on YouTube, right? And so, but it was consistent. We tried to do a weekly podcast or so, and nothing happened in the beginning. But maybe after a year or so of the YouTube piece, I started seeing leads come in that were from YouTube. They weren't from my typical marketing channels or like LinkedIn or email marketing or the audio podcast. And then eventually, like I started paying more attention to that and doing the video and started editing. And then one of the videos took off. And that's when, me and you got to know each other a little bit better.
Yeah. That's great. So you took kind of, the one medium, which was a podcast, and then, overlap that onto YouTube, right? And started to build that out. And it wasn't after like a year, right, till you seen any traction. And I think that's the biggest point I want to make is I feel like people quit this stuff too soon, right? Like
Oh,
they
yeah.
get in and they get 10 podcast episodes and then they're like, man, this isn't working, right? And it's like, man, you got to get it to 100, right? Like plus,
It was
like you got to
years.
do the consistency. Yeah.
It was years. What year did we start working on this? 2024, maybe?
Yeah, I feel like it was 24. Yeah. So I feel like it
It
just
was
over 2 years
24,
now.
25, 26.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 24, summer of 24. So I had a podcast / YouTube channel, some iteration of that going from basically 2020 to then. That's when it started taking off. So that's almost 4 years.
Right.
Between starting the podcast and actually getting like traction that was like undeniable, right? I mean, I certainly had clients and things like that, but it was very low numbers. So and it's just another skill set that you got to work on. And, the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah. And I think that, especially for a consulting type of business, for you to get out there, on social media and demonstrate your expertise, because your stuff on YouTube are really deep dives. There are these like, you've got over 850 videos. I think last time I checked, close to 900, right? Probably have over 1,000 by the end of the year at the rate that you're going. But, these are deep, like case study type videos. Like you're really showing like the sauce of like, your knowledge and then how other people can utilize that and, turn that into a business or, help their business, that sort of thing. So these aren't like a bunch of little shorts, right? Where, people have the attention spans of gnats now online. These are really deep where people get to know you and then you're able to demonstrate your expertise.
Yeah. I mean, and government contracting is not a entertaining topic. So, my struggle has always been, how do I make it an approachable subject for people that are new to it, right? And also speak to people that have been in it for a while and are looking for like, strategies and tips to, to do something technical. So, but you're right. They are not. I do have plenty of shorts, but they point to the to the long form. So and we'll drop our next one tonight on drone companies and R&D funding that they can go after. So it'll be a good one for any startups out there looking to capture some of that funding the government has to help develop technology.
Yeah, awesome. That's good. That's kind of a good parlay into talking a little bit about GovClose, because you work with consultants. You are a consultant. You help build and grow people's consulting business. And the majority of the folks in the GovClose program actually come from the military, right? So they actually already have a skill set or a specialty, whether it be, IT, cybersecurity, logistics, or whatever. And you show them how to take that experience and leverage it into helping consult for companies that want to win contracts with the government.
Right. Well, and of course, it's not just consultants, right? It's companies are in here selling to the government. I have subcontracts with the government as well. It's consulting. And most people that come into the program are, I'd say, what do we got? Maybe 40% veterans. And then we get a lot of government employees, and then we get people that are on maybe a second career. We're actually getting a lot of new college graduates, right? And that's where the government's paying me to train graduates so they can actually get jobs, because we have such a great success rate in the program. So you're starting to get people of all walks of life, but veterans are definitely the majority group in here. And then, yes, the three things we're teaching them is government contracting is the skill set, but then how do you turn that into income, right? Implementation and execution, as we know from military training, right? That is the piece. You can sit there with a book all day long, but until you actually have to get in the cockpit and have an instructor yelling at you and you have to fly something to perfect, that's how you actually learn how to do it. So this program, it's not a course, I call it a professional development program because you're learning, but then you are going to be yelled at by me and not really yelled at, but you're being held to a standard and you have to deliver, right? You have to deliver on, executing roadmaps and pipelines and building all of that. And then I certify each person at the end. And where the other piece that we help them do outside of starting consulting businesses, selling directly to the government if they have a business, is account executive jobs. So that's a high paid full-time sales position, which I also did for one of my clients, in addition to running a consulting company. So all of those for veterans are potentially viable avenues. Consulting is usually the primary path, though.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, right? Because, of the consulting path, that's one part of the program, right? So first of all, you've got to teach them the skill set, right? Like, hey, this is how you sell to the government. And then after they've made it through there, then you have a whole nother program for them on here's how you start a consulting business, right?
Yeah.
Which is, different, and I always say to people, it's like in the military, right? Like the first thing we got to do is send you the basic training to teach you how to be in the military before you can actually do the job that you're going to do. So here you've got a course that walks them through how to build a consulting business with this skill set. So they already bring some other skill set from either their military experience or life experience or corporate experience, right? And then you show them now how to take that, apply that to government contracting, and then how to start a consulting business. So if you could kind of walk us through like the consultant path, like what is it exactly? Because this will be really helpful for, people that are listening to this and maybe they're not interested in government contracting, that's fine, but they want to use that same structure that you put together, which is, the same for any type of consulting business on how they move forward and get started with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first I would say that no matter what your background is, it's funny how you could have nothing to do with government contracting, right? Or the military or the government, but maybe you worked in maybe you're an accountant, or maybe you worked for like a certain industry, construction or something, right? People don't realize that the government literally buys just about everything, right? So you could combine, and people in the program, this is what we're doing. They're combining their work history, what they're specialized in, what they've done in the past, with government contracting. Now, all of a sudden, hey, if your background was accounting and now you also understand government contracting, well, now we can work on how you help accounting firms sell to the government, win bookkeeping contracts or tax preparation services, or maybe for your own business, right? But to, I guess, go where you're actually asking is, how do you start it? What is consulting? What's a consulting business? And how do you get into it? So the way I think about it, you could also call this freelancing, right? It means I own a business, right? I own my own company and I don't have a W-2 with another company. It means I'm probably a 1099, right? But I'm reaching out to companies that I'm going to help solve a problem and they're going to pay me, right? Now, the way we teach it in the program is, we can get into a revenue model, but if you want to align what you've done with what companies will buy, I think maybe break it down to the basics. I've run people before GovClose. We had a training just for companies. We had a veteran consultant accelerator program, right? And so what I would have them do is list out everything they've been trained in, like all the training they received in the military, for instance. How about your regular degrees, right? Associates, bachelors, whatever, masters. What what problems have you solved in your career? What have you received awards for? Like, we'd go through everything, like every single thing. And then we take those and say, all right, what of those topics, of those things that you can do, right? What problems can you solve for companies, right? What will people pay you to do? Now, you could be a B2C consultant, right? You could help, doesn't have to be a company, but what we're trying to do is, what's the straightest line from your expertise to somebody either saving or making money, right? Because that's really important if you're trying to if you're trying to sell your services to somebody, right? So, for instance, in government contracting, and there's a few things that go on here, like will somebody pay for it? How many people can actually do what you do, right? How many people are out there? What are people paying for it right now? How much can you help them save or make? And if you can't help them save or make money, well, now, we have it doesn't mean you can't necessarily have a business, but we got to actually figure out like what you can make, if anything, because you got to test it. Everything is not easy to sell, right? If you want to teach piano lessons, great. But there's a lot of people that teach piano lessons, and you're probably not going to get a $10,000 client, a monthly client, to teach piano lessons, right? I mean, you can go to the market and see what they're paying or not. If you take something on the other hand, like government contracting, not many people can do it. It's super complicated. And the government's the single biggest purchaser of goods and services in the world, right? So billions and billions of dollars. I think the president's budget is the biggest request ever made. So when you've got that much money and a specialized skill set, and it's hard, and there aren't that many people that could do it, now not only does client acquisition become easy, nothing's easy, right? But it becomes a little bit easier, and you could charge a hell of a lot more, right? So let's talk consulting. In consulting, I've taken a bunch of courses, like I said, I told you at the beginning before I even got into it, but all of them would say the going rate for what you could charge would be, if you can help a company make money, you could charge 10% of what you help them make. Well, I could never charge that much, right? Because I've had companies win multi-million-dollar contracts, right? So if I help a company make 50 million in contracts, am I taking $5 million as a consulting fee? Probably not, right? So we could still charge a lot, like a very high rate, based on what we're bringing in, because it's so much money if they execute successfully. But you got to ask yourself, if you want to do something other than government contracting, and this is where the reality can kind of set in. Military veterans, for instance, often want to do leadership is usually on their consulting list, right? It's like, okay, got it. We all, everyone in the military is inundated with leadership training. Is a company going to pay you for leadership training? You might be able to get a leadership, but what are you actually solving there, right? Are you teaching leadership to their people or management, right? Like, you have to get really specific, and then you got to see if they'll actually pay you to do that. You've got people like Jocko out there that have a huge platform, right? And he goes in and with his team and teaches leadership at a large level, but he's got a best-selling book. He's got all these things, right? So, and you got to test it. So that's part of it too. Like, hey, test it out. You can look, are people paying for leadership training? Are people paying for government contract help? Are people paying for proposal writing help? Are they paying for, whatever, fitness? Like, you want to be a fitness dude. So there's lots of ways to make money, but testing it and seeing if people will pay for it, and then what are they paying for it, are probably some of the bigger things you can do there.
Yeah, that's great, Rick. And that's kind of like the first course that you put together, the Veteran Consultant Accelerator, to kind of where you walk people through that process, that same process that you did to grow your consulting business.
Yeah, I mean, basically, yeah. I had two training. I had one training program. My first one was actually training companies' sales teams to sell. So I was getting hired by companies all the time for a lot of different things, but they all needed training. None of them had a CRM that made sense. None of that. Often the sales team was never trained in federal acquisitions. Often they didn't even have a sales team. It was like a program manager that was dual hatted, right? So I was always training, the different companies. And so eventually, in my thought process is, well, if I just put a training program together, I can just say, hey, go here. This is what you, so I don't have to spend hours with each company, like trying to train each person. When it's a long process. So that was the first training program I put together. And I worked on that for a few years before we met. And then the Veteran Consultant Accelerator. And that came in because with YouTube starting to pick up steam, I started getting not companies asking me for training or assistance, but veterans, right? Veteran people transitioning out of the military, government employees, people that didn't have a company wanted, to start government contracting businesses. And that's usually the first idea they have. But I have to usually say, look, pump the brakes, right? Because it takes a long time to sell to the government. It's hard. For the most part, you're probably looking at 6 to 18 months to get your first contract. And that's if you have a business with years of sales, right? But now I remember one Army officer that was about to retire. He's like, yeah, I want to start a cybersecurity government contracting business. Can you help? I'm like, yeah, I can help. You can go through the training, but look, you're not going to have revenue next month. Like, you're retiring, you need money, right? The retirement check's not going to cut it. But what I can do is teach you how to run a government contract consulting business. And that you can generate revenue way faster. And you can be highly specialized, use what you know combined with government contracting, and be very effective. And that, talk about results. It was so obvious that was the path, and that was something that a lot of people really needed. And then from there, people would get jobs, people would get hired as CEOs, people would get equity deals in companies. So consulting can springboard you to a lot of different things, which could be really interesting and quite unexpected.
Yeah. That's good stuff. And just, like you and I met, like I'm a consultant, I've got a sales and marketing consultant, and, we connected, on one of those third-party platforms that Rick mentioned earlier.
Yep.
And then started working together, and, we started off with one thing, and then we kind of ended up on another thing. Like, that's the power. Like, you never know where those relationships are going to go. And we've been working for 2.5 years. So, like, once you really get a client and somebody that you can gel with, and you understand their business, and you can layer your expertise on that. Like, I don't really have any experience at all in government contracting, but I understand sales and marketing. And that's what I needed to understand to be able to help, you with the goals that you had in growing the business. So, you could take your skill sets and layer it on all different types of stuff, right? Like, Rick mentioned, whether it's, IT, cybersecurity, medical, bookkeeping, if you have experience in that, great. But, at the end of the day, you can go out and learn a skill set like government sales, right? And now that makes you even that more valuable in the marketplace, because you've got this skill set. Like Rick mentioned, it's, helping people sell to the largest buyer of goods and services.
Yeah.
Like, who wouldn't want to do that, right? And a complicated, process, not something that a lot of folks know, right? And, finding and solving problems. I think people start consulting businesses sometimes just because it's like, oh man, like, I know how to do this and I could go do this for other companies, but without even doing the research to find out what are the problems, what are the challenges they have, and then by utilizing your services, how can you help them grow, make more money, or do whatever it is that their goals are to align with what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, trust has something to do with this too, right? So you mentioned, like, for veterans, we're talking about, like, rank. Do you use your rank with your email? Or your former rank? Do you put veteran on there? Like, part of the reason I hired you is because you have an Air Force background and I trusted you, right? Like, there's an immediate bond and trust that happens there. And I think it's probably why we have a lot of veterans in the program and government employees. And it's also part of your messaging and, just being honest, and especially when you're talking about something difficult. And, you would kind of establish that rapport in companies, and people appreciate that. So,
yeah. I think that the military bond, I tell people all the time, like, it's the largest fraternity in the country. There's 17 million of us out here. And there's, last time I checked on LinkedIn, there was over 1 million, right? That I did. And by the way, what's really interesting is a lot of the folks that are going to be transitioning out of the military, or maybe have been in the military 10 plus years, are now on LinkedIn as well. So they're out there, and I know a lot of those are looking like, hey, what am I going to do next? And I'll get contacted by those guys all the time. They want to just understand about my experience and my transition and how that was and where are the opportunities. So anytime I look that I can connect with somebody and give back and give them some perspective, that's great. But just like, a lot of these guys, a lot smarter than, maybe we were when we were getting out. They're, 3, 4, 5 years from getting out, they're already thinking about it, and already looking at, what am I going to do? And I know a lot of those land in gov close, right? I think the one of the guys, the furthest out, I think is 3 years from being out that I ran into, that's already looking for that. Because you understand, I need to understand, I've got to learn a skill set first, which is, this is how to sell to a government before I can learn, how to build a business around that.
Yeah. It's a lot that goes to it, but if you're interested and you're entrepreneurial, I mean, like, especially for veterans, I mean, if you're retiring from the military, or even if you're separating, if you have a disability check, like, or maybe you have both of those things, like, there are very few like jobs, like careers, positions where you could be getting out, still be young enough to start something like a business and know that you have money coming in every month, fail or succeed. So for the veterans, like that, especially have a retirement check, or like I said, that disability check, I mean, most people can't say that. Most people that start a business don't have that security blanket, waiting there. So knowing that you're going to be able to pay the mortgage, you're going to be able to buy food, and that you have medical for your entire family it's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, like, to me, almost criminal not to take the risk in that situation.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you see a lot of folks come in the program, and people always, ask all the time, like, hey, talk to me about the people that are successful in the program and what makes them different. And, am I guaranteed that, I'm going to have the same success and those sort of things, right? And it's all gets down to the individual at the end of the day and the effort that they put into it. But from your experience in working with over 300 consultants and helping them kind of create businesses through consulting, what have you seen that are some of the success factors that separate the ones that are out there absolutely crushing it and those who are kind of still stumbling around? Is there any kind of common denominator?
Yeah. And by the way, it's over 400. So it's 300 and 300, I don't know how 300 low number, 2018, whatever, but that are in the program now. But we have a bunch that have graduated too, right? And so a lot of them stay in the program afterwards because of the community that we've developed. But as far as success factors are concerned, I mean, there's a few things, right? But I mean, was it Calvin Coolidge said persistence and determination trump all, trumps genius, education, and talent. I totally believe that to be true, right? So if people that come into the program and they make it through the training and they actually put an effort in, and then they don't give up, they have to implement, right? Everybody that comes in doesn't make it through. Government contracting is not easy. That's why it's such a great area. That's one of the reasons anyway. People that come in and they're persistent and determined and they get through it, they're not putting it off. And then they have to take that leap, especially if they've never sold anything before, to start reaching out and getting on sales calls and whatever it is that their niche, because there's many niches in government contracting. So it's not, some people are doing research, some people are doing lead gen, some people are proposal writers. Others focus more on like helping companies after they're on contract with cybersecurity and troubleshooting things. But it's that persistence and determination, not giving up, and knowing, like for us, like if something doesn't work, just jump on a call, right? And sometimes it's a little tweak, right, that they have to make to actually make things work. Like we had one guy, David, who was sending tons and tons of emails and email marketing, and he just wasn't getting anybody that wanted to get on a call. And then, we looked at the emails he was sending out, right? And it was very clear what happened. They were sending these 3-page emails, like, no, let's make it short and sweet, right? And then as soon as he made that change, bam, he started getting on calls with people. But, it's a journey, right? If you've never done a sales call, you might have to do 20 sales calls to get the hang of it and to start closing clients. Other people have to work really hard at the government contracting piece to really understand that. But persistence, determination, don't give up. Those are the people that are going to succeed in our program.
100%. And I think the same thing is hiring an expert, hiring a coach, being part of a community. I don't know what it is about military folks, but like, I feel like when they get out, they feel like they could just do it all on their own. And we never did anything on our own in the military. Like we always, did everything as a group and teams and those sort of things. And it's like, I don't know what it is, military folks sometimes, forget the roots on where we came from. We didn't do anything by ourselves. Like
I mean, you're right. You're right. I mean, the amount of training that we went through, the amount of like teamwork and everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, I also get it. I mean, look, when you get, and this is why when I'm talking to companies, advising them to hire people that have served in the military or still like maybe in the National Guard or reserves or something, like, look, you are dealing with people that know that they can solve any problem set because they had to go in there and do it, even if it was dangerous, complicated. But to your point, when you're doing that, you have somebody looking over your shoulder, right? In the beginning, like you're going through classroom training and you're tested. And if you don't pass the test, you got to do it again, right? You could get kicked out. But then after the classroom training, you have real world execution. Now you have to go out, I shouldn't say real world, but now you have to execute whatever it is that you learned. So for flying, it would be maybe going into a simulator and having somebody critique everything you're doing, and you're getting better and better. Then you have to get in the jet, and you still instructor, someone's watching over you, right? And now you're just training environment, but the levels of stress and consequence go up at each stage, right? But you're still doing this with other people. You're being trained. Eventually you can do it, right? And then you go to your weapon system, right? Same thing, instructors, you're being evaluated. And then finally you're ready to go into combat, right? And fly those missions. But that's after years, in a lot of cases, of training and execution, trial and error, doing it correctly, failing, getting back up and doing it again. I think that does give people in the military, because I use flying as an example, but whatever you did in the military, we all have similar experiences, right? It could just be like training, maintenance training or something. But, after you've gone through that, you feel like you can do anything on, you know what I mean? Because you know that you can, you can accomplish hard things. Sometimes you just need a little bit of help along the way.
Yeah, but and you're right. The copious amounts of training that we do in the military, like we're always in training mode, like always, right? And it's the same thing. You get out here and you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be a consultant, and you just think you could do it all on your own and figure it out, and no training, no coaching, no mentorship, no community. Like that's not where you come from. You come from a place to where you've been trained and you've been taught, you've been worked with, that when you get on the outside, like all that stuff is still here. Like it's one of the first things that you mentioned, Rick, that you did. You said, hey, I don't know what I don't know. I've got to go out and get some training on this, right?
Yeah.
And you invest it in yourself, number one, but in other people's programs to kind of figure that stuff out for yourself.
I don't know how long it would have taken me, or if I would have been successful at all, if I hadn't taken those initial business and training programs. And it was a succession. I spent probably $1,000 on the first one and realized how much that helped me in my business. And then I spent $2,000 or $3,000 on the next one, and then it would scale up from there. I've done multiple of these type of trainings and targeting the things that I really needed help on. And it really just, for me, like everything from the tools I needed to be using to, the programs I took, they didn't know anything about government contracting, but as far as scaling consulting businesses, social media is another one where I have invested a lot of time, effort, and money in training. There's so many different areas to a business that you could be overwhelmed really easy if you're not doing it right. And then it's, once you have funding coming in, right, and you're showing some success, who do I need to hire to make this a little bit easier on me, right? So first thing I did, I got a scheduling assistant, right, to handle my calendar and scheduling. And she's awesome. And she's been with me for years and years. I have people that help me with our digital platform where we host our training and community on. Sales, like you run my sales team for me, right? So like you have to have, as you get bigger, if you don't hire these people, like you're going to be stuck in a certain position. It doesn't mean you have to scale to like a huge company or anything, but you got to know, like, as you go, like investing in people, and you only have so many hours in the day, and you also have to be, for a lot of us, you have to be a father, a mother, you have children, you got to pay attention to other things going on. It's not just your business. So I feel like I have an army of 1099s right now helping me as well as advisors and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the good thing is, with the community that you built, like they have access, to that information and understanding like what's coming up next and what am I going to need, because I've got somebody with experience that's been there before. that's in my corner. And that's what, David and I are building with the veteran business community, is a community of veteran entrepreneurs that can come in and learn from each other, and be able to learn from experts, like yourself, that we bring in, and also our expertise with David and me as being multiple time entrepreneurs, and having that community and being veterans as well, and then being entrepreneurs, that you can start to learn from people that are just a couple steps ahead of you is really priceless.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Cool. Well, I brought David back in. I know we've been getting a lot of comments here, David. I know there's a lot of comments about GovClose, and I know we don't want to make the whole show about GovClose, and it hasn't. It's been great, but we definitely want to give Rick an opportunity to talk about GovClose. We're not going to hit all those questions on GovClose, but Rick can give them the details, give them kind of the rundown of what he's doing over there, and how they can find out more information and be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, if there are any specifics that, people want to touch on, you can tell me, and I'll try to hit them. But, first thing I would tell anyone, if you're interested in government contracting or the GovClose program, is check out our YouTube channel. You could just type in @GovClose, and you will see it, and me, and we'll put you to sleep with all of the government contracting training. But it's great because we have a lot of interviews. We have interviews with veterans. We have interviews with entrepreneurs. We have instructionals, right, that I put out there. Like I mentioned today, we'll drop one on how to obtain funding to build drones for the government and different drone-related technology. The last week we had more power washing contracts that were out there, which people don't think about this, right? Like, the government does buy just about everything you could think of. So check out the GovClose YouTube channel if you want to learn more. The basics of the program: it's a 1-year professional development program. It's a combination of training, live, one-on-one, and group coaching. And we also have our community, right, which is not just the group coaching calls, but, a lot of the guys are working together. We have a community page. It's kind of like LinkedIn, right, where, people are doing deals together, asking questions. We have government contracting officers in the program. We have people that work for defense primes. We have college graduates that are actually doing amazing things. I learned from them probably more than anyone else because of the crazy tech they're using to obtain clients and things like that. But yeah, 1-year program. We teach government contracting, the expertise, specifically how to sell to the government. This is not like a legal course. This is like, all of it is tactical. This is what you need to do on a day-to-day basis. Then the consulting piece at the end. We show you how to build a consulting business. We show you how to do B2B marketing, how to price, the exact proposals we're using, how we price our services, and then the different tools and things you need just to run your business. And then we have a small piece of it, which is, hey, if a lot of guys and gals want to get a job in this area. We have people working at Honeywell and some of the big defense primes. And those are really great paying jobs. That's in there as well. And a lot of people, in fact, most of them choose to stay in the program after they've graduated. So we do allow for that as well. And then they keep access to the training, which keeps getting updated, and the community and the coaching calls and all of that. We have a war room, which after you're certified by me, you get a letter of recommendation. You go, we push you out on LinkedIn, depending on what your goals are. The war room's all execution. So after they're certified, we have a group coaching call, which is just getting contracts, getting clients. It's the execution piece. We have a matching platform because we get a tremendous amount of inbound, as you know, Hal, leads coming in from our various social media channels. So they're not all for training. A lot of it's companies that still want to hire consultants, and I can't do all that work. So I match our certified consultants only with those leads, and that's the match.govclose.com. Everyone gets our CRM. So there's a lot that goes into it. I'll stop talking now, but we have a great success rate for the certified graduates. And would love to have anyone that wants to go in can go to govclose.com, watch an overview of the training. And if they choose, they can set up an interview with our advisory team, which includes Hal and some of the guys that work for him. And we'll see if you're a good fit.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that's great, Rick. And we'll definitely drop the link down in the show notes for everybody as well. So, David, anything you want to hop in with?
Yeah, I mean, I think we pretty much touched on a lot of these just throughout the discussion. But one thing I just want to bring up again is that the question of how long. And again, it's all about expectations, right? So I've been working with the VBOC, which is the Veterans Business Outreach Center. There's like 30 plus chapters across the country. It's a free government program. It's paid for by grants. I've been working with them as an outside consultant for like 6 years. We work with the Apex Accelerator groups. And I've managed over 100 federal contracts myself. But I can tell you that Rick's program, even after the experience that I've had, when I went through and looked at all of his training modules, it literally is step by step exactly what you need to do. And why that's so important is, we said it takes at least 6 to 18 months to get a contract. And that's if you're already in existing business doing work, right? And there's a lot of ways to get into it. You can get in as a prime contractor or as a sub, which is probably the easier route for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But I've seen people think that they can do it. And just because they have I'm a service disabled veteran owned business, there's set asides. There's 23% set aside for disadvantaged businesses. I'm just going to grab a piece of that. Well, once you're in that 23% pool, it's an even playing field again, because everybody has that classification. You still have to stand out. Your product or service still has to stand out, and you need to compete against it. And the issue I've had with clients that have tried to go on their own with this before is they just get overwhelmed. It's a lot of stuff to try to figure out. It's another language. It's a whole other process, and it takes a lot longer than you think. It's the government, right? So if you don't have that support group and you don't have the whole roadmap in front of you of exactly how to do it, you're probably not going to do it, honestly, unless you get lucky. So you really need somebody in your corner to kind of help walk you through it, answer those questions so you don't get hung up, so you don't get frustrated, so you get those questions answered and you keep moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like government contracting is one of the best examples of the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is knowing enough to think you're right, but not knowing enough to know you're wrong, right? So, I mean, like we talk about all the training, right? So years and years of training, like if you talk to a 30-year contracting officer like that was trained by Defense Acquisitions University, DCMA, all of that, they'll tell you they understand the contracting officer part of it, but there's so much in government contracting. It's such a vast landscape. It's 250 years of policy and regulation and different agencies and all of these things, all of these subtle understandings that you can miss very easily if you're just looking at sam.gov, right? You understand a piece of it after years and years, and kind of knowing that you don't know everything is part of this. So it is a vast landscape. The way I teach it in the program is you need to understand, you can't learn all of government contracting, nobody can, but you can learn what you need to know to sell your product or service to the government. So very specifically, once you have that, who buys what you sell, what offices buy what you sell, and just become an expert at that agency and that office, right? So, you're right. Certification like an SDVOSB, woman-owned small business, 8A. The contracts don't start falling from the sky just because you have these certs, right? What's the most important thing is, what are you selling? So I tell people all the time, like, you have to have an awesome product or service that solves a problem for the government, and then you start selling, right? So, and then you learn the path for that product or service. So, hey, I'm targeting these 3 offices. I don't need a GSA schedule because it's barely used to buy what I'm selling. And then, a litany of other things. But if you know who's buying, how they're buying, now you can have your strategy. Subcontracting, okay, there's steps for that, right? Is it using GSA? Is it using something else? There's a lot of different ways the government buys. So, but we can understand your path very easily, with some work, but we can figure out what that path is. And then just know where the rest of the information is, and you can grab it or talk to somebody when you need to.
Awesome. Great stuff, Rick. Well, definitely appreciate you being here with us and hanging out for an hour and sharing all your wisdom on just government contracting, but really, starting a consulting business and what it's going to take and what people should be looking for. So we also want to thank you for the special gift that you are giving everybody who joins the veteran business community and becomes a premium member with us. It's a free community, but we do have some resources like your veteran consulting accelerator course that you've been so good to give to the members if they want to learn about just starting a consulting business in general. And then also if they want to learn about starting government contracting, they can go to GovClose. But David's going to take everybody through a quick walkthrough of our platform here with the veteranbusinesscommunity.com.
Perfect. Thanks, Hal. Yeah, and we'll drop these links in below. But if you go to veterans or veteranbusinesscommunity.com, it'll take you over to this page. You might see it as the school.com/214 page. So like a 214, DD 214. So this is where our community is. Just like any other social media, for the most part, you have a platform here where people post, Q&A things. They interact with each other. Great community there. I'm not going to dive into it. So if you go to the About page, you can watch a video. You can see the whole tutorial on it. But in the classroom, and this is where it's exciting. So for the majority of our people, probably 70% are pre-revenue, people in the idea phase, entrepreneurs that are thinking about starting or in that early stage. We have free training, basically enough information to get you to launch your business. Everything you need as far as like go through the onboarding, you'll learn about the platform here itself. The Kickstarter training is a free one that you can unlock here very simply. And that will give you literally step-by-step of what it takes to actually launch a business as a small business, as far as filing with the state, what sort of entity you're going to pick, how to understand your customers, everything like that. And all of our live streams. So for these weekly calls like this, we record these and we post them into these live streams. So if you can't catch it live, that's fine. You can go in there and watch any of our other recordings from any of our other subject matter experts too. Now, if you do decide that you want to upgrade, say, if you are an existing business or you're really on the cusp of launching your business, you might want to unlock some of these other courses here. So for the premium subscription right now, we kind of have it discounted at $29 a month. We'll unlock literally the rest of the courses here. So how to buy a business. So maybe you want to become an entrepreneur or small business owner through acquisition. There's a course for that. How to build business credit. Stop using your own personal information and credit scores to do that. Access capital and a bunch of other stuff here you can see if you go through the course. So, but the one that we're really excited about here today, and I mean, honestly, Rick has been amazing with kind of blessing us for this, partnership to do, but this Veteran Consulting Accelerator. So this is a new course that he has now given us access to, which will take you through. And I would say that it's more for just consultants to any small business owner that wants to, understand their brand, launch their brand and market their brand. You basically run it like a consulting company anyway. So he's given us access, any premium member access to his course here as well. And when you're ready for like true government contracting, and serious about it, we do recommend reaching out to Rick and starting the GovClose process. And he can walk you through with that. But, this is kind of the initial path for the people just starting out. And we have all that information here for you and all the support for you too. So we are a full community. We want to be here to support you through your whole journey.
Good stuff. And then after you get through the Veteran Consulting Accelerator, can you step on the next steps down below? Yep. On that right there. If you'd like to learn about, taking that skill set, starting a government consulting business, then you can watch the video from Rick and get in touch with him inside there as well as you could go to just govclose.com and watch some trainings there. And then also on Rick's YouTube channel, as he mentioned. So anyway, we hope that you will come join us in the veteran business community, just veteranbusinesscommunity.com. We'll also link that in the show notes. So it's a free community for you to join, where we're constantly doing every day we're laying out some sort of a new tactical thing that you could be implementing your business, as well as get your questions answered and things like that. And as Rick had mentioned, really important to find mentors, get training, and get plugged into a community. So with that, that leads us to the end, a little bit over the hour here, but thanks so much, Rick, for jumping on with us. This was really great. Got to know a lot about you and your background, and then of course how you're still helping and serving the veteran community, and also the government as well. So thanks a bunch.
No, thanks, Al. Thanks, David. Appreciate being on. You guys are doing awesome work, and yeah, so hopefully a lot of veterans out there start making some money.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.